And welcome everyone to today's webinar, Movers and Shakers, sponsored by Porch Group Media. You might have noticed we have changed logos from V12 to Porch Group Media, so congratulations to V12 for their brand change. Love the new name and new look. And excited to carry on this series of Movers and Shakers under the Porch Group Media sponsorship. So thanks to Porch Group Media for continuing to be our sponsor. With privacy rules and consumer control of their data becoming more and more protected, a marketer's best asset is quickly becoming their ability to understand and create audiences. In the past, relying on audience creation from the likes of Google or Facebook produced great results, though now is coming under more and more scrutiny, and things have changed. Techniques like persona creation may be good for brand development, but when it's time for a customer to purchase, audience development and creation is now a central opportunity for most marketers. Today, I have with me Amy Klenke, who is VP of Product and Delivery at Porch Group Media. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. And I'm so, for those of you who are attending today's webcast, I'm so happy to feature Amy, as she is an expert on audience development, an ever increasing topic in, I think, the world of all of us marketers. And we're going to ask her advice on 5 of the best ways to create audiences to drive results. So buckle in, because today's webcast is going to be a good one. Welcome, Amy. And Amy, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Porch Group Media, that would be great.
Sure. So I've been with Porch Group Media for about 8 years, worked in every department except finance. And between sales and operations, now I am heading up the product team and all of the operations and delivery teams. So, I see the product from inception all the way through fulfillment. And a lot of changes have been happening in the last few years about how we are serving our clients differently and what the needs are really in the marketing marketplace.
That's terrific. So again, privacy and the privacy landscape, this topic took off when California launched their privacy regulations and left all of us scrambling to prepare for them. And then in kind of a weird follow suit, I mean, Apple followed suit, an actual product followed suit with their, I'd say, consumer choice initiative. And I think as a marketer myself, I think more and more of us didn't maybe anticipate how quickly especially the Apple changes would really affect our ability to market and find our consumers. And we find ourselves, we found ourselves, through the mid 2010s getting more and more ability to find the customers that we want to market to. And now with these changes, and again, Apple has their own regulations, and each state is adopting somewhat their own form of these regulations. So it's getting more and more complicated. On top of that, Apple has followed suit with their own consumer choice initiative. And things are just getting harder and harder. We're almost regressing back to where we were before things started opening up, and the world is different now. So, Amy, what are your thoughts on where things are headed?
Well, nobody wants to be tracked. I mean, we'll just put it out there, right? In the last decade or so, we've become increasingly more dependent on being able to track people digitally and determine when to strike, right, and when to get your offer in front of them. But with cookie deprecation and digital and email engagement statistics being skewed by different privacy apps, it's really becoming more and more difficult. And we do see a market-wide shift to marketing to people based on information that they have volunteered.
Yeah, as we like to say in the marketer's world, we want to always reduce the creepy factor.
Exactly.
And it is kind of uncanny sometimes, you know, when suddenly you're talking about something or you're researching something and then it finds you wherever you go. I mean, it
Yeah.
is really uncanny. And I think that is really what started, you know, to worry people. And if you go to the next slide and you're looking at people's, you know, the activities that they're doing from a privacy standpoint, you know, again,
Mhm.
clearing your cookies and your browser history. I was just going through and doing that on my own computer today, deleting or editing past internet posts. When you think of
Mhm.
when you are looking for a new job, you know, and again, how employers can follow you and learn more
Yeah.
about you on the internet, you know, and so on. So these are just some things that, you know, people are doing overall that McKinsey tracked. And it's really interesting. But to me, these bars are growing and growing and growing, you know, over time. And so what
Mhm.
is, you know, a marketer left to do to find their, I'd say, path to consideration?
Mhm.
So next slide. Yeah, so I think the big
Mhm.
question we're going to answer today and the 5 ways to really create audiences to find who you want to market to is to understand, you know, with all these changes, where are what are marketers left to do? Because I
Mhm.
think that kind of wide funnel we had before with, say, Google developing audiences for us or Facebook developing audiences for us. You know,
Mhm.
Facebook especially got in a little bit of trouble with how wide they were casting their net or opening their funnel. They've really clamped down now, and you have to bring your own audiences and whatnot. But again, where does this leave marketers? You know, I think that's what we're going to spend the majority of time talking about today, for sure. So next slide,
Wow.
guys. I'm so glad to have you. This is one of your favorite topics, I know.
It is.
Um, so I think that, you know, we really boiled it down to 5 areas, and we've listed here, Amy, with your help, 5 types of audience. And why are these, you know, why are these audiences, again, the first kind of defense layer, I'll say?
So, your own data, of course, is always going to be the most valuable. Sometimes it can be overlooked when you're chasing after that next customer. So that's why I always recommend start with your first party data first, your own customers, your own hand raisers. Make sure that you are nurturing them and keeping in touch with them and not ignoring them. All right, that's absolutely number one. Movers are one of the top indications of readiness to make a purchase or a change. I know that we're going to go into that more in a minute, but they really, really are a very valuable segment. And that is the first place I recommend anyone goes, even if you don't think that your product is related to moving.
Mhm.
Then in-market shoppers, you need to be able to find them a little bit differently these days because you can't track them anymore, or you won't be able to soon, right? So finding them, but being able to know who they are before you reach out to them is really, really important. And then using additional third-party data to help make different decisions about your audience and curate it more carefully would be step 4. And then step 5 is your modeled audiences. So those are your lookalikes.
Mhm. You know, you talked about movers and homeowners, and I was talking recently with the CMO of a large, I'd say, hospital healthcare
Mhm.
entity in Atlanta, and
Mhm.
I was asking him about audiences and things, and I asked him about movers, and he said, you know, and I started to tell him about, you know, think about it, somebody new moves into town or they move across town and they need a
Mhm.
doctor, they're not going to drive 45 minutes to go to their
Right.
doctor again. You know, wouldn't even movers apply to, you know, your healthcare system? And he looked at me, and this is a really seasoned marketer. If I told you some of brands that he has worked with in the past, he tilted his head and he said, maybe I should look at movers. I haven't
You
even thought
bet.
of that. And I
You bet
hadn't
you
thought
should.
that way. And so it is an interesting, I'd say, audience
Mhm.
overall, and one that is
Mhm.
ever changing, that's for sure. So let's start with number 1, Amy. You know, again, that's what you just said. You should always start with your own data. And I was going to ask you, and you
Yeah.
already put these words in my mouth, where do marketers get started? And I think that we've laid out really a nice infographic here to kind of walk the folks who have joined the webinar to walk them, you know, through the process of how to think about just how they get started. Sometimes for us, I know I've often had meetings with my teams and I'm like, we need to get X done. And then the next question is always, where should we get started?
Yeah. Well, definitely start with what you already have. You know, this is, Larissa has it laid out here very nicely in the slide. It's zero-party data that consumers freely and intentionally give to you, and then data that you own because you obtained it directly from your audience. Yes, it's very typical for people to do like a standard, usually email campaign to keep up with their existing customers, but you need to make the most of that. And you don't know what you don't know about those customers. And some of those insights are really valuable when personalizing communications, because that's going to give you a much bigger bang for your buck. People want messages that are personalized to them without being creepy, right? So a perfect example of that is we were working with an automotive company at one time, and we noticed that there were a significant number of responders to the last campaign and clients who owned a dog, which had nothing to do with an automobile. But when we noticed that, we were able to take their first party data and segment it, and the messaging for the people who owned a dog had an image of the dog in the backseat of the vehicle. And that really, really showed us the power of taking something that, you know, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. It's a completely innocuous, seemingly unrelated thing that you can learn about your customers and really use to engage them more strongly.
Mm-hmm. What if you don't have, say, a data science department and you're a small, you know, a smaller size, small to mid-size company? You know, who does this work of really starting with your own data and starting to, you know, figure out, like the dog example you gave, you know, who does this work if you don't have an internal department like that? I know when I started at PODS, you know, I didn't have a data science team. I had to curate that and build that. I came from Comcast, this, you know, very large $60 billion company, and we had army of data scientists who were brilliant, but I went to PODS and I had no one. So who, you know, what do you do if you don't have a data science department, a modeling department, an enterprise business intelligence department? What do you do?
You outsource it. You outsource it. There are plenty of companies like Porch Group Media who do this for brands every day. You know, do we do it the best? Of course we do, but there, you don't have to come with us, right? So we can take your data, we can build a data set, we can put it in a platform and augment it with all different attributes, just like that, owning a dog, who would have known? And then you can use that to really customize your marketing. And, you know, it runs the gamut from simple software that it's called CDP, it's a customer data platform, all the way to companies that will completely build your data set for you, depending on your needs. But the availability is out there, and you don't need to be able to fund your own data science department in order to take advantage of it.
I think we lost Lucy.
We may have. I thought maybe it was me.
No, I was trying to figure that out too. Okay. Okay, so about the next slide, if you want to dive in.
So let's talk about movers. Here's what Lucy would ask me. No. So movers, we already started to talk about this, right? They are one of the most valuable segments of the marketplace that are not your own customers. They are 5 times more loyal to becoming long-term customers. They are in a phase of their life where they are starting fresh. They are starting new. And whether that you know, is furniture or something move related, or even purchasing an automobile, You know, movers will spend money on a lot of different things, not just their move. And it's really, it is few and far between to find a business that should not be targeting movers. You know, they are a really great target for almost everyone, and they're overlooked.
I definitely thought it was interesting, Amy, when we had done our new mover trends report with Harris Poll. One of the things I found most interesting was how many people are purchasing before the move. And a huge,
You bet.
a huge time frame when you should be targeting, and in industries I didn't even think of. So kind of going back to your point earlier, movers are really, even if you don't think that's necessarily an audience for your industry or your business, chances are they might be. It's worth testing.
Yep, it is a very strong indicator that that somebody wants a fresh start, whether that is, you know, it's not just where they live and it's not just their home decor. Like I said, an auto is that's a very strong indicator that somebody's going to be in market to buy a new car, which is not at all what you would think, right? At a time where you're putting down money to close on a new house, but it actually is. It actually is.
Thank you. Technical yes. In Tampa, Florida today.
Oh no. As we're going through these 5 audience types, what I forgot to mention is that really, I almost have them ranked in a way. Your own data, you know, that's the most valuable, low-hanging fruit. But the next group for you to consider targeting is movers. Hands down, it is movers. Like I said, almost regardless of vertical or industry, you want to be putting your money where it's going to have the most effect, and movers are almost always one of the best performing audiences.
Yeah, it is interesting how wide the verticals go for movers to be a reconsideration trigger. And, you know, when you move, you really take a look at everything because you're having to switch off, turn on and turn off so many things. It is really an effective audience to consider and, you know, to talk to, because people, when they're moving, they do make changes. And also when you move, there's a lot of entities you don't realize, I think, are regional. You know, when I think of banks, gyms, you know, healthcare gyms, restaurants, you know, many of entities are regional. And so when somebody moves, all those new things are going to be in their consideration set, or they're, you know, I'll call it geospatial. You know, you might have lived close to a Shake Shack, you know, at your old address, but Five Guys is what's close to you at your newest address. So, you know, again, the place you go to get, you know, takeout for burger and fries could change very quickly, you know, just based on a move. And I think even a lot of retail establishments, you know, don't really even look at those types of changes. So it's really interesting, this category. I definitely agree. Especially if you look at the stat that says 90% are willing to try new brands when they move. And a lot of that is, again, your geography, you know, where you move. Are those things that you used to always, those haunts, those, you know, weekly places where you go, are they really in proximity anymore? And you know, I think a lot of brands don't think about movers, thus the healthcare example that I just gave you. And it's really an interesting audience to always look at.
Yep, absolutely.
Before we go on, because I'm already here and on camera and I have a question, I'm going to throw it out to you now. Okay, so just talking about the mover segment, somebody had asked, because moving is time sensitive, how early should I market to movers to see the best results? And I thought that would be just kind of a good time to, like you had mentioned, how early Porch Group Media has access to movers, to just kind of talk about that.
Well, we actually often target what we call pre-movers. So people who we know based on their behavior are getting ready to move or are likely to be getting ready to move. You know, they've put their house on the market, their house is under contract, they've had an inspection done on a new home. There are a lot of different indicators. Even things that they are looking up and reading online can be indicators that they may be getting ready for a move. We typically see pre-movers about 3 to 4 weeks before anyone else does because of our relationship with Porch. But regardless, if you can reach them, it's really best to reach them before they even move.
Yeah, most purchase decisions are made pre-move, and if you even look at past survey data, you know, the majority of things that people consider in a move, those decisions are made pre-move. You know, I'll give mattresses, for example. Most people don't want to move their old mattress. You know, they're gonna send it away with junk removal at their old home, and then they want the new mattress at their new home. They don't want to take care of doing that. Same with appliances, furniture, any kind of home improvement, home services. And, you know, typically, especially with home insurance and different insurances as well, home insurance, car insurance, you know, you have to prepare all that, you know, in your move process. So a lot of those decisions are made prior to the move. And I think even on movers and shakers, we've shown some of that data, survey data in the past, definitely.
It's also worth mentioning that when you're talking about a move cycle, it is also important to try to find out which of your existing customers are planning to move, because that gives you the opportunity to retain them if your goods or services are something that they might cancel when they move. Or it's a good opportunity to upsell them or cross-sell them, because you know that they are, you know, again, when they're in that pre-move cycle, they're in that decision-making process and they're looking for a fresh start for things. So I would not ignore movers within your own customer database. I think that's really important also.
Yeah, retention is key, definitely. Or like you said, cross-sell, upsell. Great. On to next slide 3.
All right.
Yeah, we mentioned some of these, but you know, Amy, this is, you know, these are examples of audiences. How do you create an audience or to find these shoppers, you know, with cookies going away, are we back to pre-cookie methods? You know, what are the ways that you can create and find these audiences?
So the most comfortable way for everyone, you know, as we said, nobody wants to be tracked anymore. The most comfortable way that we do it is by using historical data to create inferred models. So we can tell based on historical data from our data partners who has purchased what in the past and at what point. We can build those models and apply them to any consumer data set to then infer when somebody is going to be in market. And that is proving to be a very valuable substitute for online tracking. Yeah. We can also, there are circumstances in which you can still capture the type of content that someone is viewing. And if they're known to you, then you can target them, you know, include them in your audience without being creepy. That's always going to be an important factor. Absolutely.
There's a creepy factor again, definitely. And yeah, you know, really some interesting things. I mean, some of these specialty audiences you have, you know, I think are intuitive, like to movers here. But the one that always surprises me from the research data I've seen from Porch Media is everything surrounding automotive. You don't think about automotive, but I mean, in buying a new car, finding aftercare, you know, I mean, just everything around automotive is always, it just fascinates me when that pops up in the data that you all have shared in past episodes of Movers and Shakers, definitely.
It's that fresh start mindset.
Yeah, definitely. But Amy, I touched on this just a second ago, you know, with cookies going away, are we back to pre-cookie methods? You know, are we back to impressions? Are we back to those types of things? Or with, you know, these media networks that are popping up everywhere, and Porch obviously has, you know, is launching their own media network, you know, with Porch Media Group facilitating it. you know, where is this, where are we headed? I mean, if we don't have cookies, where are we headed?
Well, what's going to become more and more necessary moving forward is being able to create an audience based on real people who you can identify and what they have voluntarily told people about themselves. You know, the data about themselves and the preferences and the shopping behaviors that they have volunteered. And then being able to connect them through a company that does have connection points that are privacy compliant and not based on cookies. There are ways to connect them so that you can still target them digitally without needing to rely on Google or Facebook or, you know, any of those other companies because they track their users on cookies. So, you know, and when you're looking at gauging the effectiveness of your marketing, also, it's going to just really be super, super important going forward that you know who you're targeting before you target them, or else you can't connect the dots afterwards.
That makes sense. So we go to the next slide. You know, what do consumers expect you to know about them if they don't want to share their data? You know, and they want relative personalized messages, but they don't want to share their data. So what is their expectation? What do they expect you to know?
I think that they expect you to know all the basic information about them. And most importantly here, you know, we said that people want personalized messaging without being creepy. What you want to avoid is sending offers to people who are not going to qualify. Right? Always cast the widest net you can when creating your audience. I always advise against narrowing it down too much by saying, oh, they have to look like this and they have to look like that. Rather, I would eliminate the people who cannot or would not be a customer. For example, if you're selling a product that requires you to have a certain level of household income, you wouldn't want that to go to people who don't meet that criteria, because then it's wasted money. So I think that using those details to be exclusive versus inclusive really serves the marketer best when planning out their campaigns.
That's great. You know, I think some of these stats we have on here are really interesting. It still puzzles me though. Again, you're likely to buy from brands that send you relevant offers. I mean, I think the assumption here is that someone has signed up with your brand. You've said you allow them to market to you. You obviously are purchasing from them. You've given them your name, your address. They obviously have your purchase history. And so I guess, you know, for those consumers, and at any time you have the ability to unsubscribe from their emails, you know, or from other marketing, you know, and, you know, but how is, I'd just say the landscape changing? Because oftentimes from acquisition, you want to bring in new customers who haven't given you all those permissions. And so again, through audience creation, you know, how do you find those customers if they haven't given you permission, you know, and have more and more restrictions, you know, not allowing you to, again, sort of leverage other companies' information to cast that wider net, you know, all of the examples we gave with Facebook, and we know kind of also say the trouble that they got into casting that wider net previously.
So a lot of publicly available information is out there, and a lot of information that comes from surveys, or like I said, you know, volunteered or freely given information about somebody is out there, and it really just takes a solid data compiler to put it all together so that you can connect the dots and then find those people and market to them. So obviously you have to have a way to address them, You need their name, their postal, their email, and be able to connect it with a digital identifier that's not a cookie, right? And when you have all of that, you can start to put that picture together and market to them respectfully.
Yeah. So if you go on to the next slide, modeled audiences, when you start to look at the many media networks that are coming into play, is everyone going to now have their own identifier to build and find these audiences, or is there going to be some kind of central identifier? How's that all going to work?
So it won't be central. There will be several, but not everyone. It's not as easy to do as it sounds. So there will still only be a handful of companies that can make that connection for you. And really what they need to do is have access to first-party data that they can use, again, in a privacy compliant way, which is not many.
That's great. What's the significance of modeled audiences? How does a marketer build, a modeled audience? And I know we've been talking about, being able to build them, and you can do them internally or, again, externally through an agency. So again, what's the significance of these modeled audiences, and how to build one?
There are really two types of modeled audiences that we see used a lot and used successfully. The obvious one is the lookalike audience. Many people try to do this, and this is where you take your own customers and compare them to an external data source to try to find lookalikes. Again, we're going to say much more affordable and easier to get than you would think, because there are companies like Porch Group Media who will do it on a smaller scale. You don't have to be a giant company with a big data science team to be able to do that. We can, and I know that there are others out there also, we can take your customer data, compare it to our consumer data set, and find those lookalike audience members who are not already your customers. The second model type is an in-market model. So that is where we take, we mentioned this before, that's where we take that historical data and use it to create lookalikes of people we know made those purchases, even if it wasn't for your brand. And then we can create an inferred in-market model that we, again, apply to our entire data set so that you can find those people that aren't already your customers.
That's great. I'm sure a lot of folks who are have joined us today are here to understand that and know how that they can start to build these audiences themselves, especially knowing things are changing. If we go to the next slide. So once you have your audience, again, how is it that marketers should, leverage these audiences? And you've touched on a few of these things, but maybe you can go a little deeper for us, Amy.
Sure. So earlier you said back to basics, right? We're kind of going back to our roots here in marketing, and that is absolutely true. Direct mail continues to be the #1 way to guarantee connection with your intended audience. So still very popular, still very effective. Email, social, programmatic display. Then with email, of course, you still have to have that contact point. Social, programmatic display, connected TV, pre-roll ads. For those you would go through a media network who has that identifier, so you can still create your audience using traditional means. And that audience that is individually identifiable, but then transition that audience to a digital platform and be able to reach them in those ways. So
Amy,
social.
Let me pop in real quick. Would you say that media networks are really starting to take over some digital properties, I would say? So when you think of Facebook, Pinterest, Google, like, are media networks starting to really take over, I'd say, the feeding of audiences to these formerly very popular digital properties.
They have to.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, because as people object to being tracked,
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a way, and really you can only do that through a media network, to take offline voluntary information about them and connect that to their digital persona. And so those types of things, we touched on this a little bit. It used to be very common, and it still is to a degree, to I want to do a Facebook ad, or I want to do an Instagram ad. So I'm going to use the information that Facebook knows about their users to select my audience. They're not going to know that information for very much longer, because the regulations keep getting tighter and tighter. And so that's where a media network becomes really, really valuable, because they know about those audiences in a way that does not rely on that restricted data.
Thank you for clarifying that. So you kind of had gone through acquisition marketing and what the opportunities were to leverage your audiences. What about with your own customer base? I mean, you kind of already know who they are. How do audiences enhance your own customer base so that you can be more efficient with your marketing dollars?
So as we talked about a little bit, it's important to not kind of force a one-size-fits-all on your existing customers. You really want to make the most of your efforts, segment them, create models from them, and you can also use the information that a third-party data company is able to add or enhance to your existing file to then let you do further segmentation, build better creatives and messaging, like we talked about with the picture of the dog in the backseat of the car. Those additional attributes are really, really valuable in making the most of your own CRM marketing.
That's great.
You also, those types of factors can help you with channel selection as well, right? We know that certain age groups respond differently in certain different channels. Older Americans are more likely to open an email, for example. Younger Americans are not likely to respond to a Facebook ad. It's just, there are definitely preferences there for channel as well as messaging, and you really need to know more about your existing customers in order to take advantage of that.
That's great. Let's jump to the next slide. I think, we talked a little bit about media networks and how they're replacing, these digital properties. And again, we talked a little bit, it's come up a couple times about how Porch is now creating a media network, and Porch Group Media will be helping their clients leverage the Porch Group Media Network. It's very exciting. And I really love especially the CTV capability that Porch is offering. And so when you put, it seems to me, Amy, when you put the audience together with the ability to do CTV, you have almost that programmatic way, to leverage TV. No more signing up fronts, no more, I can't do TV because I don't have the budget, and I really want to, get into the household and can't do that with TV. Well, now you can. So I think that's really exciting. Is that one of the benefits you see the future of this audience creation allowing?
Absolutely, because in the past you had to spend so much in order to reach your true target, because there was no way to differentiate. Your commercial, everyone saw it, and you really couldn't pick who saw it and who didn't. But with CTV and pre-roll, you're able to get those videos and commercials in front of, but you're only paying to show them to the people you really want to show them to. And that makes it much more cost effective.
I think what's interesting too is you're starting with audience selection, and then you can place that audience selection across, all different channels versus before you might have to go to a branded email company and say, send this to this kind of audience, or you'd go to a direct mail company, or you'd have your own, direct mail
Yes.
model. You'd say, send this to this audience. And then you'd say, now do digital. And I know, back when I was in telecom, that was something that we struggled with, what was kind of the marketing waste between, this direct mail budget that we had and this digital media budget that we had, and, then comes the attribution fight and, who gets what attribution. But now starting with the audience and filtering through a media network, I think if the media network has measurement, which I know the Porch Media Network has measurement, but I think that becomes important as well in this kind of formula. But I think those are some of the interesting ways that, marketers have to really focus, is by starting with that audience creation and then kind of letting it out to the ether of the particular media networks.
Starting with an identifiable audience like this allows you to ensure that you're reaching the same people in multiple channels versus just hoping, that this profile is going to transfer between channels. Every channel, you're gonna only be able to connect with so many people. And when you start with one cohesive curated audience like this, then you're hitting them multiple times in multiple ways, and that's really the most effective way to get their attention.
Let's go to the next slide. I know we're getting close on time here, but some really interesting results already with your audience creation. Do you want to pick one or two here to tell us about this, these results, again, with the audience creation and leveraging the Porch Media Network?
Sure. So we're seeing very, very high ROAS and ROI when you're carefully selecting the audience versus going with a general audience. And touching them in multiple ways versus, like we just said, going to different channels independently with different audiences. In the furniture space, we're seeing a ROAS of 84-1, with 5 to 10% being incremental over all other advertising, which is tremendous. Security, again, when you have that information about movers before they move, security mover segments are converting customers for the security vertical with a 2-to-1 ROI. Auto parts, aftermarket auto, we're seeing almost a 3.5 time ROI, which is just it's just like, why wouldn't you do it? It's so easy. Honestly, it's so easy when you're starting with the right audience. And then you just set it and it runs and you barely have to do anything.
That's great. Well, thank you, Amy. This has been really just such a great session of movers and shakers. And I really think the folks here who have joined us for today's webcast really are walking away with the understanding of why, audience creation is so central to that pivot from the old cookie world to the new, really, media network world, I will say. And we've really appreciated your time. We have Amy for a few more minutes today, and now's the time to put through questions. Maybe you've already been putting them through while we've been talking. I know, Larissa, you are the curator of the questions. Can you share the first question we might have for Amy before we have to let her go and get back to her day job?
Yep, absolutely. So the first question we have is, so we have our customer data in a few different systems. Are there processes you use or recommend to take these and add other audience insights, or should these be kept separate?
Oh, they should definitely be combined. They should definitely be combined. Yeah. I mean, we work with different companies all the time, brands who have data all over the place, and we help them connect it and build a consolidated database for them. Again, it goes back to, if you don't have your own data science team, right, we can help you. There are other vendors who can do it as well. But definitely combine it all into one place. add the additional data points about the customers, and ideally put it into a platform where you can access it that way and slice and dice it. Like a customer data platform, CDP is pretty important for that.
Excellent. So next question, how many audience segments should I be targeting? For example, sending a different message to my customers versus say a mover.
Well, I think that you should prioritize your audience, first of all, customers first, movers second, in-market third, right? And customize the message wherever possible. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference. You know, if I'm running a program that targets movers and people I know are shopping for, we'll just use furniture. People who are getting ready to move, people who have just moved, people who are shopping for furniture, people who are probably likely to be shopping for furniture based on an inferred model. I don't necessarily need to split that message out. I can send the same message to all of them. An existing customer, yeah, I'm going to send them a different message. It's fairly easy to do if you're using the right software to separate them out and create some dynamic content that just fills in the different bits that you want for your different audience segments, but combine it into all one campaign so it's more efficient.
I feel that could almost be a whole nother webinar.
It could.
I have a question for you, Amy, you know, kind of coming from the past industries that I have. You know, there are other companies that claim they target movers. There's one that, if I remember correctly, partners with the USPS.
Mm-hmm.
Saw another one on LinkedIn the other day that's actually franchising this capability. You know, why is Porch Group Media different? I mean, because everybody's saying they do movers, they can find movers, they can curate movers. You know, what makes Porch Group Media different from those other companies that I just mentioned? And you probably know their names. I can't remember their names.
Well, I'm not going to say their names, but what makes us different is that we have first-party data provided by people who are moving to the Porch group of companies. And while we don't release that, we do have access to it, and therefore are better able to vet out and tease out who's really a mover and who's not. Not everyone fills out a change of address form at the Postal Service. You know, there are plenty of people who are moving who don't do that, and plenty of times where you need to know before they move. And so your more traditional mover data sources are not going to be able to do that for you.
Yeah, so you're saying the more traditional ones are post movers and pre-movers, and also, I mean, we've talked today about how important it is to get to that pre-mover.
Yeah.
And that's really the secret sauce difference. I would say that Porch does it in a permissible. You've been given permission to do that. Is that what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Great. It's the permission-based availability, and it's also the timing. Timing is so important with movers, and the fact that we know that they're moving several weeks before anyone else really does give you an edge.
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, I think with that, we will end today. Larissa, unless you think there's another burning question to.
No, that was actually the perfect wrap up. No more questions, but if you do have any questions after we wrap up, you're always welcome to send those to me. You'll get the recording tomorrow, so you can just reply to that email and let me know.
Great. If anybody wants to ask more questions or contact Porch Group Media, there's a QR code listed on the screen right now, and you can just snap it and it'll take you straight to more information. So thank you to Porch Group Media for sponsoring today's Movers and Shakers, and thank you to Porch Group Media for lending us Amy today. I thought this was a really great topic, and audience creation is such a hot topic right now, and as are media networks. And so happy to have you, Amy, an expert in this area help educate the folks that have joined us for today's webcast. In a few weeks, watch for some information coming. Our next topic, we're very excited to have a very knowledgeable guest who I'll keep as a surprise, talking about really the evolution of CTV and OTT media within media networks. And also a very hot topic. We touched on it briefly today, but we will have an expert in this area do a deep dive with us on this topic. Very excited to present this in the future. So if keep your eye out for the emails and the advertising for our next session. We're very excited about that one that'll take place later this month. So thank you everybody for joining us today on Movers and Shakers, and I'm Luci Rainey, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lucy.
Bye.